Welcome back, MTG Joe here. Today, I'm about to share with you the top standard decks for best of one that will help you dominate the competition since Bloomburrow's release. If you want to get mythic rank, if you want to increase your win rate, if you just want to find a cool new deck to take with your journey this month to kind of rank up the ladder, definitely check out this video. We're going to cover a bunch of different decks today. We, as always, are getting the data from Untapped.gg, what you see on the screen. Companion tool that runs alongside Arena's client. Tracks your win rates with other users, gives a whole bunch of stats, gives us like metrics in terms of popularity of decks, breakdown, stuff like that. This is the second video we're doing this week just because it's a new set. We want to kind of see as the early days, the meta kind of evolves. We're also going to be looking at, towards the tail end of this video, individual contributors in the community who have hit Mythic already in the first couple days and see what decks they took to kind of climb the ladder early in that sense. So as always, I will timestamp these deck lists. If you want to use Untap, the link is in the video description. All the deck lists will be included in here. So definitely check it out. And then we'll just jump into it. We're going to start with the popularity of the decks, the metagame breakdown, the tier list in terms of what decks people are playing. And then we'll look at the win rates itself. We're going to look, for the most part, Diamond and Mythic, and in some cases, I stretched to Platinum rank just to get a couple additional decks to see what's working. Since it is still pretty early, it's only 4 days into the season. So, popularity of the day, Rakdos is the highest win rate thus far. Now, or sorry, popularity, not win rate. Yes. So the Rakdos deck, there's kind of two that are going around that are getting bundled in. There's the mono red splash Callous Sellsword, which is basically a mono red prowess deck with the Rakdos adventure card to fling. And then there's Rakdos Lizards as well. So two decks to kind of keep an eye out with that. Mono black is a discard focused deck at 13%. Orzhov Bats is 11%. Mono red at 7.5%. Golgari we have at 7.5%. Boros can be Mice or Convoke, neither of which are putting up too good of a win rate. So we're actually not going to cover that. The Golgari decks, I think, are better in best of three just because you get access to sideboards. Generally speaking, mid-range decks do better in best of three. Selesnya, we have a Rabbits kind of token deck, and then Azorius is typically like a control deck. One thing I want to address before we jump in, a lot of comments from the previous video, folks were like, oh, all best of one is aggro. That's kind of a byproduct of best of one. Best of one is always going to reward you for being the most linear, like direct deck possible, whether it be hyper aggressive, hard control, or dedicated all-in combo. If you are someone who enjoys more mid-range focused games, definitely check out best of three. You do get the access to the sideboard. It does help you in terms of hedging the matchups. It's just too hard in best of one at times. You know, you pack your deck full of like cut downs and stuff, and then your opponent's playing creatureless control. In a sideboard match, you're able to better kind of adapt to that. But in any case, we will jump into it. We have standard best of one, 180,000 games played in 4.5 days, 5 days from Platinum to Mythic rank. If we go to Diamond, it's 35,000. So those are kind of the parameters we're looking at thus far. From the Diamond, we're going to start with there. The highest win rate deck is this Selesnya deck. It's a Selesnya kind of Rabbits token style shell. 66% win rate with this one here. And kind of going through the cards itself, we have Paw Patch Recruit, a 1-mana 2/1 with Offspring. Offspring is basically kicker. Allows you to get 2 bodies, the second one being a 1/1. And then this has the effect whenever a creature you control becomes the spell of a target, or target of a spell or ability an opponent controls, you put a 1/1 counter on another creature you control. So it just helps you build up your team. Seasoned Warguard, 1-mana 1/2. When it attacks, if you control a token, it becomes a 3/2. So it's basically, in this shell, more often than not, will be a 1-mana 3/2 when it attacks, which is pretty sweet. We have the Valley Might Caller, a 1-mana 1/1 Trampler, which you think trample with a 1/1, what's happening here? But it's because whenever you cast another frog, rabbit, raccoon, or squirrel, you get to put a counter on it. So it just gets bigger that way there. Notably, this is cast. Oh, no, sorry. Enters, not cast. Got that mixed up. So tokens coming in, so something like Hop to it, which makes 3 rabbits, would put 3 counters on the Might Caller, which is a really nice curve. Burrow Guard Mentor just gets bigger with the more creatures you have. Trample, Gateway, Case of the Gateway is removal spell, and then an Anthem. Phineas provides counters onto your rabbits or tokens, and then eventually draws you cards. Fallen Hair could be a big boost in power, as well as an anthem for your tokens. Also, incidentally, a rabbit. Regal Bunnicorn, just it's kind of funny. This is a rare, and this is an uncommon, but just having trample is super relevant. This scales better with non-creature spells, but this deck's pretty much all creatures. You have the Valley Quest Caller, just an anthem effect for your rabbits. That gets them bigger there as well. And then hop to it for more tokens. Night Variant as card advantage. You got Restless Prairies as creature lands. You have Cavern of Souls. And then you have some Oak Hollow Villages to put counters on your creatures. From there, we go to the first Rakdos deck, 61%. So this one here is, like I mentioned, the mono red splash black. So you have Slick Shots, you have Swiss Spears, you have Cacophony Scamps in here. You have the new Heartfire hero. So Valiant is similar to Heroic, but can only be once a turn, but abilities also work with it as well. This one gets a counter when it does, and when it dies, similar to the Scamp, it could deal damage to your opponent. Then you also have Emberheart Challenger, 2 mana, 2/2, prowess, haste. Whenever you target it for the first time, you exile top card of your library. You may play it that turn, which is nice. And then the Callous Sellsword, the reason the deck is quote unquote Rakdos, you're basically playing it for burn together to fling at your opponent more often than not. The rest of the deck, just a bunch of pump spells, Dreadmaw's Ire, Felliness Rage, Bane Splitter as a way to kind of flash in to get the boost, but also the equips work with Valiant later. Monstrous Rages, Blazing Crescendo kind of effects in there. From there, we go to Mono Black. So within Diamond, there's a little bit of a drop off, 55% from there. So the one thing I always find with these discard decks, you do kind of run out of gas a little earlier. This one was someone posted it on Reddit. I had seen it. First off, I think there's too few lands in this deck. If you're playing 5 and 7 drops, even with this being 2 mana more often than not, 21 lands is too few. I'm actually going to see if I can find a little bit better of a mono black deck. This same one. Let me take a look. I think the curve on that is a little off. Yeah, so someone did reasonably well with it, but it could be their MMR as well. We'll kind of cover this, and then I'll search up a better mono black list. I don't think 2 of 2 of 2 ofs makes sense in this format. Kind of built around Bandit's Talent, Forces Discard. It's the rack effect that punishes them for not having cards in hand that drains them, and then can draw you some extra cards. This deck probably wants 25 lands at the minimum. Glistening Deluge as a sweeper main, kind of addressing the more main board. There's a couple different of these 3 mana spells you can look at in that regard. Just a whole bunch of different removal options. I think something like just playing the full Go for the Throats is more impactful than Tithing Blade in this deck. You care less about the Edict and more about the targeted removal, especially if people are going fairly wide. Shieldred's a little slow in best of 1. I'd probably just play 1 or 2. You can do something like Hostile Investigator that plays better into the theme as well. Aclazotz is a pretty big wall for these aggressive decks. In best of 1, playing just more copies of the Virtue might not be a bad call either. Just a life gain can kind of preserve your life total as you kind of go along. But I'll look to try to find a better mono black list. See what we find there. Yeah, to me, this one looks just a little bit tighter. If we kind of go from there. So still some of the removal. Again, I would play the full cut downs in this type of deck. You have your Virtues. We could see the higher land count in this one here. Shelly's, Hostile Investigators. Just a little bit better curve. You're not full all in on that. To feed the cycle, just cut this, play cut downs. I'll do that in the list. You don't really want to forage here. I think just having cut downs early is more meaningful. Gix Command is a sweeper. I think this is you still get the abilities of Bandit's Talent, but you're not drawing dead discard cards when mono red will have their hand gone by turn 3 or 4. From there, we go to Rakdos Lizards. So we have tribal type old deck. So Hired Claw, whenever. So the Lizards itself wants to deal damage to get triggers. So Hired Claw, when it attacks, deals a damage. That will then trigger some other stuff. Iridescent Vine Slasher, when a line comes into play, it pings your opponent, so it gives you some value. The Fireglass Mentor, 2 mana, 2/1. Beginning of your second main phase, if opponent lost life this turn, you exile top 2 cards. You can play one of those cards till end of turn. So this is a way, even if you can't attack, the pings itself gives you some card advantage. Flame Ache Gecko is basically like Burning Tree Emissary if an opponent lost life. So it kind of adds the mana that you can kind of chain together. Gev, your subsequent creatures come into play with a 1/1 counter on it for each opponent who lost life this turn. Whenever you cast a lizard spell, it deals 1 damage. So it's kind of self-enabling, and it gives counters for your things. You have Shocks, you have Go for the Throats as removal. Laughing Jasper Flint is another lizard that happens to provide card advantage. Then you have the Valley Flamecaller that just adds a point of damage for every point of damage a lizard you control would deal. This one's also playing Rockface Village as a way to give your lizards haste. Now, notably with these village cards, the colored mana that it produces does not work with the actual non-creature spells. So something like Shock cannot be played off this in terms of the red mana. So be mindful. Some folks were asking about that in mono red, why I wasn't playing it in my list. From there, we go to Abzan. So this one was in platinum. So this is a hard control deck. So this is what I'm saying when like the other side of the equation is just playing hard control. This deck is going to win through Myrex and Restless Cottage. The only way it wins. And technically a Sunfall token. And White Sun's Twilight. So your sweepers are your win conditions, which is kind of funny. So we are playing 12 sweepers. We are playing 8 targeted removal plus 4 more that also can reanimate. You have Terra Senders, Artifact Enchantment to exile. Up the Beanstalk draws you cards with any of your sweepers as well. Ancient Cornucopia as a way to gain life. So you could do a big White Sun's Twilight for a bunch of mites. You can reanimate with Virtue. You can steal cards from their graveyard and exile cards. Sunfall makes you tokens as well. So just killing everything, kind of winning through that route there. Then go to a Jeskai Control deck. This one is Platinum to Mythic as well. So it's kind of Planeswalker you control. You have 3 steps ahead as a counter. Torch the Witness. Torch the Witness deals X damage, twice X damage to target creature. If excess damage is dealt, you get to investigate. So just a scalable removal spell, but notably this is sorcery speed. Helixes, No More Lies, Bandit's Hall as a way to kind of ramp and then draw you some cards. Brotherhood's End is a sweeper, as well as Temporary Lockdown. Make your moves an interesting one. I think this is probably just worse than some of the other effects. Like Get Lost just does what this does, but cheaper. This 3 mana conditional on the creature itself. It's an interesting one, but it's a little pricey. Ill-Time Explosion is another sweeper. Your win conditions, you got Jace, you got Ral, you have Tef, you have a Chandra in here. Sunfalls as a sweeper, and then a 1 of Spellgyre, Counterspell, or Surveil 2, then draw 2 cards with it. You'll see some of these decks now are playing Fountain Port, just another utility line to provide you like card advantage, tokens, or treasures themselves. We then go to Orzhov Bats, so 58% here. So this is a life gain synergy deck. So you have a bunch of bats in here. Zorlin, whenever it attacks, you gain a life. And then when it enters or attacks, you can pay black-white and 2, and then return a non-land permanent with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield finale counter. You draw cards with Darkstar Augur, Gumdrop Poisoner can be removal, creates some food. One of the enablers of the deck is Lunar Convocation, 2 mana. So at the beginning of your end step, if you gain life, opponent lost a life. If you lost life, you create a bat, and you can also just sink mana into it to draw cards. So this kind of plays with that ability. One thing with this here is Caves of Koilos and Thran Portal. You can pay life and then trigger this. So that's a way around it. Removal, cut down, Go for the Throats. You have Essence Chandler, which is the new kind of Johnny's Pride mate. If you lost life this turn, it gets Flying and Vigilance. And then whenever you gain life, you put counters on it. Then you can redistribute the counters. Deep Cavern Bats, Amalia's Case of the Uneaten Feast is a way to gain life. And as well as Rune Lurker Bat. From there, we're going to go to some community decks. So this one is from Mana Fort. They went 55 and 23. This is a Boros Control deck. Yes, Boros cannot just be a mice deck, a convoke deck, stuff like that. It could be a control deck. Elspeth's Smite is removal, Torch the Tower, Get Lost, Helix, White Sun's Twilight as a win condition. We have the Bandit's Hall, which we mentioned, Lockdowns, Brotherhood's End, just tons of removal. You have a draw engine of Tokiskia's Welcome and Urbrask's Forge. It draws you a bunch of cards that way there. Every turn it comes in, you have a creature, you draw a card, kind of get some value there. You have Beza. We'll go like this so we can pull it up. Beza, the Bounding Spring, just kind of equalizer style effect. Enters the battlefield. You create a treasure if opponent has more lands than you. You gain 4 life if they have more life than you. You create fish if they have more tokens than you. You draw a card if they have more cards than you. So kind of evens you out. Some Sunfalls as well. So just killing everything. And then having eventual win condition with the Forges, the Bezas, the White Sun's Twilight, whatever it may be. You have Restless Biovac as well as a creature line that can win you the game. You then go to Orange Domo, and this is kind of a Gruul take on the Fling deck. So we have Gruul, kind of Prowess, Audacity, Scamp, Heartfire Hero, Monstrous Rage. We have War Squeak. Enters the battlefield, enchant a creature. Target creature and opponent control can't block. Enchanted creature gets 1/1 and has haste. You have Innkeeper's Talent in here. Just a single copy. Yes. So this could give trample and counters. Ozolith doubles counters. You could fling them with the Sellsword. You have the ordinary Tumblewag, puts counters on things. Voldaren Thrillseeker puts counter on things, and then you could fling at your opponent. So a lot of different fling effects with these small creatures. So you can get them big and then kind of fling them at your opponent. In all honesty, I would maybe try out like a 2-2 split. The Ozolith's strong, but it doesn't do anything on its own, and it's legendary, where the Innkeeper's Talent just really strong on its own. This card is really impressive every time I've played it. And then lastly, Mono Green 34 and 16 by Sawars. So this one here, we see the Innkeeper's Talents. We have Evolving Adaptive, which gets bigger. Hard-Hitting Question as a deal damage effect. So you get around like Death Touch, Paw Patches, Flourishing Bloomkin scale based on your forest. Keen-Eye Curator, 2-mana 3/3 that can exile graveyards and gets bigger. Sharp-Eyed Rookie gets bigger. You have a Hunter's Talent as a fight effect, along with Innkeeper's Talent. Bloated Contaminators in here as a 3-of. Don't like how they kind of show this. You have Outcaster Trailblazer, draws you cards, gives you mana. Sharpshooter, just another 4/4 reach that kind of triggers. So you have a lot of 4-power creatures that can give you card advantage off the Outcaster. There's a sideboard here as well. Interested, but this one here, best of one. You got a nice aggressive deck as well. So that's it for the week. Let me know what you've been playing, what you've been liking. The mono red deck I featured, seems like people are not doing like the best with it. It's interesting because like I find this sometimes I do well with a certain mono red deck, but some people don't. Could just be like when you're playing more prowessy themed decks, it doesn't always work out the best for folks because the sequencing matters a lot more. So like this is like 48%. I'm still winning with it on the side. Like I'm playing 2 Mirror and Bane Splitters over the Squee. But just sequencing is important with these types of decks because you're playing smaller creatures. The manner in which you kind of interact does play a big effect into it. In any case, hope you enjoy. Catch you next time. Thanks for watching.